Good afternoon, everybody. A lovely sunny Friday where we are up here in London. I hope you're all getting good weather. Nothing like a bit of good weather to help you through the problems of the day. And we obviously, like you have probably heard today, that Boris Johnson is the latest to get infected, and also Matt Hancock. So it's worrying times when the Prime Minister and the heir to the throne, these bugs are, they don't bother who they infect, do they? But we wish them all well, and we hope that that will continue. And of course, those of you who've been watching the news on a regular basis, you'll see that one of the big worries is that some of the major surgeons have now got it, and people who are critical to the NHS. And we hope to get through this. And the number in the UK, apparently we had a record day yesterday in England. So worrying times, but please all look after yourselves and make sure that you are cut off and you are distancing yourself as much as you possibly can. And of course, whilst you're distancing yourself, what better way to spend your time than sitting and listening to myself and Jackie, who's here again with us today. Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
We had one message this morning from our Director of Learning, Peter Stewart, who said that if any of you get a message to say that you can't eat tinned pork because it contains the coronavirus, please ignore it. It's just spam. And on that, obviously, yesterday brought up what we had anticipated for a long time, not necessarily the same shape, size, and description. But nonetheless, there is some help there for the self-employed. It's leaving it a bit late, some would say, June, and I see where you're coming from. I understand that. Reading between the lines, I would think that the original sign up and draw down your benefits was going to stand, but perhaps a certain amount of pressure from Parliament and businesses and various other people have resulted in the government having a rethink, but probably not quick enough to be able to bring it out immediately. So that's where you're getting the June date from at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I know Jackie overnight and this morning has been working on some of the answers to the questions which she's presuming you're going to ask. The other thing, though, just to say, we covered it basically yesterday when I said that it would appear that the government is looking very carefully at who pays tax, who doesn't pay tax, and whether everybody is on a level playing field. It was coming with changes to the IR35 rules, albeit that was pulled back to cover just medium-sized businesses or people earning over $250,000 a year or something. But there has always been a bit of conjecture that government would want to do something to stop people having different ways of paying their tax, different levels of tax. And so what we've done, I've been in touch with the Treasury, and we are very lucky that next Wednesday, that's the 1st of April, but after April Fool's bit is finished, so 3 o'clock again next Wednesday, we have coming to talk to us Bill Dodwell. Now, Bill is the chair of the Office for Tax Simplification. He reports directly to the Treasury and to the Home Office, and he is a very well-known man in the circles that we work in. Certainly, he's been working with Jackie for many years, and Jackie's been on a couple of committees that he's been involved with. And I've said to him, look, we want to know if he can give us any guidance as to what's going on. He said he will speak candidly, openly, so we'll have him on Wednesday. I'll ask him a few pertinent and pointed questions, and then again, open it out to you to ask anything of him. But I've met him before. He came and did a conversation at the House of Lords with us, with our patron, Prince Michael, and some of our main business leaders. And he was very open, very frank, very entertaining, good quality speaker. So we'll see what he has to say on Wednesday. And we do have a few more people that we're bringing in next week. We'll be mentioning those at different times. But first of all, what everybody wants to know about Jackie is there light at the end of the tunnel or just a longer tunnel?
I think the light is still the train heading in our direction, but it's, you know, the information is getting slightly clearer. Overnight, HMRC were updating, we've managed to get some of the details now on things we've been discussing for the last few days. Now, what I did last night is, or first thing this morning, is I have updated the first article that we put up on Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday. So what it is now is all the information I've gone through, and I've got updated and today's date next to the things that have changed. So you can see what's changed and what hasn't. So where we've already discussed these items, the latest information is on there now. And at some stage today, if it's not already gone up, the questions that were asked yesterday, I've put together some comments on, but I do have a few updates for you.
Can I just interrupt, because some people are coming with us for the first time today. So that is, go on to the ICB website, go into resources, which is along the top bar, hit that, and then hit COVID, and that will take you through to our hub, which we've created specifically for this. So lots of information from government, lots of information from HMRC, and a lot of information from Jacquie. And as Jackie's already said, the question and answer sessions from the last 3 days have been put up there. And but look out for the information which is current. Some of you have asked us to leave the other stuff as archived. We'll be taking that down slowly. So it almost start from the end and work back.
Yeah, Amy's updated the hub, the COVID-19 hub today, and it's very clear what's been updated. And what I've put together is actually in the news articles. So, bless you.
Yeah.
He's actually in the news articles. So we'll be doing that, and I'm working closely with Amy to make sure that we've got the information together correctly. Before I go into some of the questions that have come up, I'm not sure if this is your chuckle for a Friday, but we've just put up, HMRC have issued a new 0800 number for COVID-19 queries. And I rang them today, and I don't know whether it's because it's the first day, but I did actually get through. However, the problem I had with it is that you go through the menu and they say, if you want to speak about this, dial this. If you want to speak about this, press this. You have the standard menu. Every single one of them has option 1 to dial, to press. So you end up going through the whole thing. And at the moment you press 1, and then you go through all sorts of information. But fairly quickly, I did actually get to speak to somebody on the advice line, because I'm trying to find out about one of the major outstanding questions that we've had, which is to do with the small owner manager businesses with a single director and how they stand. And I have to say, the lady I spoke to on the line couldn't help me, but she said, well, we'll have to go and speak to a technical advisor and we'll call you back. So I thought, well, okay, give them 6 days and they might get back to me. Within an hour and a half, a very charming lady rang me back to talk through my query, which I asked her about. And her answer, would you believe, was, the only information I've seen on this is on the Martin Lewis website, which is Money Expert website. So you might like to check on that, which I thought was a bit amusing. As we understand this at the moment, if you have a sole director business, which is a lot of our members and a lot of our members' clients, if they are taking PAYE and dividends, they are definitely not eligible to apply for the self-employment grant that was announced last night. So we are back to the job retention scheme. Now, the problems that we've had and the differences of viewpoints of that is, if you are a sole director and you furlough yourself, you may not be able to do that because you need a working director to run the business. Now, I looked on the HMRC website just before I came online at what constitutes the role of a director. And I'm just going to quickly read them out to you. A director of the limited company must follow the company's rules as shown in its articles of association, keep company records and report changes, file your accounts and your company's tax return, and basically pay any corporation tax. Now, I thought this might be a bit controversial, but I've been thinking about this. And if you are unable to work in your employed role, running your trade, maybe you can furlough yourself from your wage, but still run the business as a director, because the only director's responsibilities are to keep the company going. It doesn't say anything about the company trading. Say, bit confrontational that, but maybe some of our experienced members might like to come back to me on that one. That is purely my thoughts at the moment on it, because we have no other information. It looks as though it will be based on the salary, not your dividends, because that is not what you take out as PAYE. That is a profit you give to all shareholders. And the dividend, of course, is based on you being a shareholder, not a director. So the dividend has nothing to do with you being a director. That's what you get as a shareholder.
That has been confirmed, Jackie.
Yeah.
It is just anything that's gone through the PAYE system.
Yeah, it's the
So it's not what appears on your self-assessment tax return. It's
and the self-assessment tax return doesn't apply because you are not self-employed, the fact that you take a dividend. So we're back down now to your pure salary that you take, and whether you can or cannot furlough yourself. That's the only query that I think is left on that. And that's a legal thing that the HMRC couldn't help you with because they're tax.
Jackie, while we're talking about this still, we've had a number of inquiries over the last 3 days about when the salary has to be lodged so that somebody can get furloughed or whatever. We've said it's the 28th or 29th of February.
28th, they confirmed.
That is still correct, isn't it?
It's the 28th. Yes, they have to be on payroll on the 28th of February because the income calculation is out now, and I have a feeling it is on the article. I have a feeling it's the hire of either the relevant month from the last year, so March goes back to March last year, April goes back to April if it's there, or the average of the last year's monthly salaries, which is prorated if you have only been employed for part of the year. But if they were not employed on the PAYE scheme on the 28th of February, they cannot be furloughed as far as you claiming back anything. You can, of course, still pay them, but you're not going to be able to get anything back. There's one question coming here on this. A seasonal staff member who's been in payroll since March 2019, now full-time from the 11th of March on a significantly increased salary, will I be able to claim the 80% on the new salary or based on last year's earnings? It's got to be on last year's earnings. There's been quite a few questions coming through yesterday and today about that with people. I think one of our members actually has an accountant who's recommended that their director goes on a higher salary to claim a higher amount, but it's definitely, that's not going to happen. It's got to be up to the 28th of February. It's
actually more than one of our members, Jackie. We've had quite a few now, and our advice is exactly as we've been saying earlier this week. You should not get involved in any form of activity that is trying to boost a person's salary or anything else. It's stick to the rules as you always would as good ICB bookkeepers we know. And I've noticed also there's one here from Margaret saying, can key workers be furloughed 1 month and then work another? I think that is the case. It has to be taken on it can be taken on an as-is basis.
Yeah, the minimum. Yeah, the minimum that you can have someone, you have to have someone furloughed for is 3 weeks. That's on that came out in the guidance last night. So I think the way I read that is that you could possibly swap your furloughed workers month and month, put them on furlough 1 month and then not on furlough and back on full pay the next month. I think until we see the portal that's open for claiming back this grant, then I think we'll know more when they open the portal and we can actually get access to it to see how you do the information.
Jackie, there's we've got another query here from Jane. What happens with seasonal workers that are just starting work in March? Now, we haven't specifically covered this, but I know a lot of workers, although they are employed to avoid any sort of problem with HMRC, sometimes they will only be used on a fixed contract of, say, 6 months because, I don't know, fruit pickers or working on specific areas that are seasonal. Have we got any information on that?
If they are on a if they are on an annual contract, but they are basically, they will be on a 0 hours contract, so they're only being paid when they work. The rules for that are the same as for any employed person for 0 workers, and it's an average of the last year, or the relevant month, whichever is the highest. So that again is come out in the details overnight. Now, I had a question, sorry, just one question's just cropped up I've seen about, and this is for self-employed people who are, our members may still be working, but on a vastly reduced income because a lot of their clients have closed down. Now, the self-assessment is for everybody, and it's not for you who are furloughed. So as I read it, and please do come back and argue if you don't agree with me, as I read it, for our members who are maybe on a vastly reduced income, you can still apply for the self-employment grant, which is based on the average of the last 3 years' taxable profits, or the average of however long you've been working. And it does not state that you have to declare that you're currently not working. You don't have to put yourself on some form of a furlough like the employed staff do. So I think you can still claim it, but it is a taxable grant. So what will happen is any money that you get, you'll have to declare on your self-assessment next year, and you will be taxed and charged national insurance on it as normal. So if you're still working part-time and you manage to get the full grant, then you're just going to end up paying more tax on it at the end of the year.
Okay.
Just looking quickly at the questions. Is there anything else?
We've got one here from Pam. Why can I not see attendees as well as panelists? Only because, as we've got several hundred, we couldn't get them all on the screen, if that's what you're asking. Also, some people yesterday, I think, felt that by carrying people's names, it might be against GDPR. So in the absence of anybody at the ICO to tell us otherwise, we thought, oh, well, there doesn't seem to be any reason for it. So we take it down. If we find out that we're okay, we'll put that back up at a later date. But at the moment, that is it. Unfortunately, you're seeing the both of us and nobody else.
Applying for more than one period of statutory sick pay. I think standard statutory sick pay applies there. If a worker is off for more than one period because different members of their family are self-isolating, can they claim more than one period of SSP? I think the normal statutory sickness pay rules here, because what the government have done is they've said that they've removed the waiting day period from 4 days down to nothing. So you get paid from the first day. If you have a second period of statutory sick pay within 56 days, then the waiting period is null and void anyway, and you get paid from day one. So I think if you're on statutory sick pay, I don't think that's going to be affected. Let me use, I'll quickly, questions are coming in fast and I can deal with them at the moment.
Yeah.
To see. Here's an interesting one. Yeah. Can a self-employed client who has no income at the moment due to COVID-19 work in Tesco stacking shelves until the June benefit comes through? Will the income affect the benefit? No, it won't, because the payment benefit is based on your last year's salary. And I think there are a lot of people doing that at the moment, trying to get money to cover them until the June payment comes through. So I would think, no, it's not going to affect it, because you're not going to be asked to claim on a percentage of what you're earning each month. They will tell you, HMRC will tell you how much they're going to pay you. So they've made it as simple as possible.
Yeah, there are quite a few companies looking for people to work part-time during this period. Obviously, be very safe if you do that, but it is necessary. I think Tesco and a number of the other companies have said that since the government asked for volunteers for their own purposes, there has been a bit of a drop-off in the number of people who've volunteered, even though there is money attached to the Tesco output. But I gather the volunteer call that was supposed to be for 250,000 people has now topped 600,000. So we Brits know what to do when it calls upon us.
What happens to people who are split 50-50 between employed and self-employed? It's quite clear that the self-assessment grant will only be given if your income taxable profits from self-assessment are more than 50% of your total income for the year. So what they'll do is they'll have a look at your tax returns for the last 3 years. The taxable profits will be averaged over the 3 years, and you have to have at least 50% of your income from self-employment so that they know that it is your main form of income. So if you're 50-50, they'll look at it and unfortunately tell you whether you're eligible or not. And the other 50% you may be furloughed from, but there are going to be people. The Chancellor said last night that he reckons that about 5% of the workforce will unfortunately fall between all these grants and will have to revert back to universal credit. But they can't cover everybody.
A couple of difficult questions here, really, and I'm not sure to have them, but is it okay to pay 80% furlough plus 1 day's holiday each week, thereby employees paid in full each week? I understand.
You can top it up. You can top it up. Whether
the holiday, can you do it with a holiday?
You can stipulate when your employees take holiday.
But if it's paid holiday, it's Peter and Paul, isn't it? Really, I mean, it doesn't make any difference, does it?
The trouble is, if you're making them take days paid holiday and making up their salary, then they're losing out on their holiday when all this is finished and they can't take any more holiday. So, but I think, again, I'm wondering if that's to do with the contract of employment, whether you can state when they take it or whether it should be in your contract of employment as to whether you can stipulate when they take holidays.
Yeah, I believe that if in the contract that we have, and I need to check on this, if you're furloughed, it doesn't class as employment. It's sort of a gap.
No.
So therefore, you don't accrue holidays or anything else, or service years or anything. But we need to check on that. And the question below that was, can you put an apprentice on furlough and claim 80%? That's from Tracy. Yes, as far as I'm aware. Is that right, Jackie? But if
yes,
you were
yes, they are an employee, even albeit temporarily on their period of time. Yes, you can furlough them. You can claim back the 80%. I think, as I said yesterday, the Shadow Chancellor was pushing the government for apprentices to give the grant of 100% because they're on such a low income. But we haven't heard anything about that yet.
And you didn't get any answer as to whether if the 80% actually then puts somebody below the national minimum wage. This is not just apprentices.
Information that I have seen is that because they are not working, they are therefore not entitled to minimum wage.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're not working. So it's an income because they obviously haven't got the costs incurred of going to and from work and everything else. So yeah. Information I've seen says, no, that's fine. There's a couple of specific ones here. Marie, I'll try and come back to you on that one on a one-to-one, I think. Oh, statutory maternity. Anyone who is on statutory maternity leave and getting SMP should, I think, remain on SMP for the full length of their statutory maternity leave because the company will get all of that back plus an extra 4% to cover NIC. So they're better off leaving them on SMP. And then once they're back, if you're furloughing all your staff and they can't work and nobody is working, then you can furlough them. However, what I would say is please look out for employment law, particularly with maternity pay, that you're not discriminating in any way if you furlough someone who comes back and you've kept somebody else on who's been working for the length of time. So please be very, very careful about the employment law if you're dealing with things like this.
As a general rule, you can actually furlough all or part of your workforce. It is down to negotiation, I think, more than anything else. And you can decide that a particular function within your company is more important than another function. But again, as with all these things, it is down to negotiating with the person because they have to agree to be furloughed.
A couple of questions on a property and self-catering furnished holiday let owners as to whether they count as self-employed. I would need to do some research on that. There's quite a few people come in on that one. Are they classed as self-employed? They certainly pay tax through the self-employment scheme, but I'm not sure if it's trading income. So I will come back to that one for everyone. Furnished.
There are a couple of people with various connotations of when a person is working, when a person isn't, etc., etc. I think as bookkeepers, we must bear in mind that if anything looks like you're either being asked to fiddle things a little bit, or you're trying to make things look slightly better than they are, you must steer well clear of that. You can't even condone it by saying, well, I'm not going to do it, but you could possibly do that. We mustn't do that. We must stay away. As always with these things, any major disaster, there's always somebody trying to make a fast buck. But I know that HMRC will be looking very carefully at these returns, and they'll be checking stuff out, not only when you're paying it, but afterwards for the rest of this year, early part of next perhaps. And really, we must make sure that, I know some people are finding it really tough. They're having a really bad time of it, but they can't bend the rules. That you've got to be pretty straight and work to the rules. Please remember that.
I read on HMRC this morning that if you are off work for shielding, then you can be furloughed from work. Yes, I think that's right. That if somebody is shielded and they can't work, you can furlough them. Can the 80% be claimed from the date of furlough, or can it be claimed from the 1st of March? It's the date they were furloughed or laid off. So if somebody was laid off at the beginning of March and are taken back on, then they can be paid furlough from the 1st of March. But if they've worked during March, then they have to be paid the full amount under their contract for the hours that they've worked, and then furloughed once there is no work for them. And that means you've got to do a split payroll, and you show the paid employment as a separate line from the furloughed employment, and that's probably the best way to deal with it at the moment.
Will the self-employed grant relate to self-catering furnished holiday let owners? I presume that's down to how they declare that income. Is that right, Jackie?
Well, there is, on the property sheet, the self-assessment, there are various sections. There's properties, there's furnished, there's holiday lets, and it depends. I will try and get back to you on that one as soon as I can. If you can bear with me, there's a lot of people asking the similar questions. Quick one here that might be useful. Do you have to pay back universal credit once you get your self-employment grant through? I don't know enough about universal credit, but I will try. If somebody else has got some information on that, that will be helpful. But I don't know. I would think not. Whether you have.
I think they said last night. The Chancellor said about this that it will be. They're not quite sure how quick they can get this new 80% funding in, and they're thinking it will start from hopefully the 1st of June, which hopefully is a later date rather than an earlier date. But that is starting from then, I understand. But I'm sure they'll give more details. I don't think they've got many details themselves. It looked to me as if it was a bit on the hoof with that one. And they're probably spending between now and the end of May getting it sorted.
Does the system means test businesses, i.e. if you have funds available to pay staff, do you have to? I don't think that is so much an issue, because it's whether you have work for them. So if you've got work for them, then and they work and they can work from home and everything else, then you carry on paying them as normal. If they can't work for you, or you have no work for them, then you can furlough them, I think.
Okay. Another one on rental income now from Lorraine. I think we've answered that question. That it's whatever appears on your annual tax return.
Client who was self-employed last year and went limited in May with a payroll. How will this work in that case? I don't know whether you can claim both or no. The self-employment is going to depend on whether your self-employment income was more than 50% of your total income. So over the year, maybe not. Again, some of these questions we're going to have to, almost wait until the portals and the applications are over and see what they come back with. It's difficult to know. But HMRC are coming out with quite a lot of details on a daily basis. Oh, right, here's one, Martine. Am I correct in assuming that if the director is not payrolled, he cannot apply for the job retention scheme, which leaves him unable to apply for any funding? I'm sorry, but I think the answer to that one is yes. He's going to have, he or she's going to have to apply for universal credit. You have to be on the payroll to apply for the furloughing job retention scheme, or you have to have been self-employed and have more than your income of 50%. And unfortunately, somebody like that falls within that 5% bracket where they're not going to get any assistance at all apart from applying for universal credits.
I can't really understand why a director would not be paid anything unless it's, I don't know, shadow director or something or other, but normally they'd take a minimum salary unless they're getting that from somewhere else to get their full benefits. But I think this is something Bill Dodwell will be talking about next week, because it's certainly something that the government wants to eradicate if it possibly can. It wants people to be a little bit more upfront and take a reasonable salary for a reasonable job. What reasonable is, perhaps Bill will also be able to tell us, but I know that a lot of people have been doing this for a long time, and a lot of these bigger cases have appeared in the press over the last year or so.
One thing I've just thought of, I had a message from one of our members this morning who thought this might be of assistance to all the other members. If a company has a leasehold payment, for example, for cars, there is a deferment in leasehold payments for 3 months. And this particular member actually contacted 5 leasehold companies yesterday and had that confirmed. So if your clients have a leasehold in cars, they can defer the payment for up to 3 months. And that's come actually from both HMRC, from somewhere, and also from the leasehold companies.
I think that's probably leasing for any capital, isn't it?
I think it's any leasehold. I think it's any leasing. Calculate furlough pay.
Yeah. Sorry, I have a client who was self-employed last year and went limited in May with a payroll. How will this work? I think that would be taken on the self-employment. Would it? No.
I think that's the one I was looking at just now. I think we've got to wait and see how the balance of salary and income, because if they're no longer self-employed, because if they did their tax return up until last March or May, that means it's in the current tax year.
Yeah.
So as of the end of March 2019, if they were self-employed, then they will still be considered for self-employed because they haven't ceased their self-employment on their tax returns. Oh, that's an interesting one. Watch this space on that one then.
Right. So in April, presumably they were self-employed, as you say. The only thing is that their self-employed income for that year then will be over a month. Yeah, that could be a difficult one, couldn't it?
Yeah, but if they're looking at up to March 2019, so if they were still self-employed at March 2019, at the moment, HMRC has no further information on them.
19,
so if more than 50% of their income, they may get the grant, but not be able. I don't know.
Is that for self-employed person?
Start trading when you apply.
Yeah.
Oh, Lisa, question here. Is the profit for self-employed based on or after capital allowances, please? It's taxable profit. Actually, somebody asked this question yesterday and I wasn't too sure at the time. It's the profit on which you were taxed, which is actually after capital allowances. But that means that if you have invested a lot of your money in capital and you're claiming capital allowances, it reduces your taxable profit. So therefore will reduce your income, which to me seems a little unfair when you've invested back into your business to have your income reduced. But again, I'll have to check on that one.
There's an article here which Eunice just passed across me. Who can apply? You can apply if you're self-employed individual or a member of a partnership and you, 1, have submitted your income tax self-assessment return for the tax year 2018-19, have traded in the year 2019-20, are trading when you apply or would be except for COVID-19, intend to continue to trade in the tax year 2021, have lost trading stroke partnership trading profits due to COVID-19. Your self-employed trading profits, as we know, must be less than 50,000, and more than half of your income comes from self-employment. And there are,
if you're not continuing to trade, that would mean probably no, you're not going to get it.
well, I think it says intend. If you intend to continue to trade. So if this is the end of the road and you've decided to throw the towel in, I think that probably wouldn't work. So basically, whatever happens, don't throw in the towel yet. And I think that is one of the things I'm saying to a lot of our members for their clients. Whatever happens, when we do come out of this, and we'll hope and pray we will, people are still going to want the same services, the same advice, the same guidance on everything, and you know, people need to try and hang on in there and look at the future.
That particular question came from a member whose client ceased being a sole trader in May last year and is now a limited company, so may not. Sounds as though they might not. Oh, here's one from hi Terry. What about furloughing a director then volunteering to work for the business? You cannot work for the business. I think that's the whole thing. If you are working, then you're not being furloughed, I think is the answer to that one. We're still down to what the duties of a director are and whether we can split that between employment and director's duties.
One of the points it makes in the write-up here is you cannot be furloughed and then volunteer to work for your business.
That's there, yeah.
Yeah, so I think if you're volunteering to work for the government, that is one thing, but you can't, I mean, basically that would be a fiddle anyway. I'll get my money and I won't get paid, I'll just volunteer to do my normal job or do part of it. So that might be a number of the other questions as well, really. I mean, I think people have got to be careful, but be clever. If you are a director and you stop working and you've furloughed yourself, opening the post or something like that is not really carrying on the business. But I think if you're going to go and do anything more than that, which might be a bit more substantial and could be perceived as being some form of proper work, then you're really not furloughed. That's just a name, not an actual thing that has happened to you.
Couple of comments. Oh, Sharm, thank you for your comment on the directors under PAYE. I've got that one, so I'll follow up on that one.
We have another one here about accruing holidays on furlough. Now, those, I understand if you lay your staff off, they have to take holidays. No, that's if they're working from home, isn't it? If your staff are distancing themselves and working from home and they've taken their phones and their computers home with them, those people have to take holidays in exactly the same way. You have to treat them as employees and make them take holidays as per their contract. I will see what we can find whilst we're on to see if we can get somebody to tell us whether you have to take holidays as part of your furlough period. The problem being, of course, if you're furloughed for a long period, all of a sudden your entire staff is going to want its holiday entitlement in whatever period is left of the year, which might cause a problem. But I'll see if we can look into that. Actually, Paul Beer, I think he's on again today. Paul, if you've got an answer to that one, because this is the sort of thing you talk about quite regularly. Sorry, Jackie, carry on.
No, it's all right. I was just reading some of the information here from Lisa about statutory sick pay. Some of these longer ones I'm going to need to read and come back to you on this. So if there's anything once I download all the list and it's a specific individual query, I'll come back to you individually. Otherwise, all of these questions we'll try and get answered and put them up onto the website. Because again, we've got lots of lovely questions, and as you can't see them today, you won't realise how many are coming in.
We've got here from Marie, which is not a question, but just to say that she has a client who pays rent, and she requested on that client's behalf a freeze in the rent increase, and actually she also got them a 50% reduction.
Oh, Nice.
And she finishes by saying, if you don't ask, you don't get.
You don't get, absolutely.
People asked Mary. So, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what's going on at the moment is negotiation, as we've said throughout this week. Yeah, it favours the bold, as always, I think.
I'm just going through, quickly looking at the questions going back a little while ago. Some of these we've already answered. The calculation of the salary, which is used to work out the 80%, in the news article that I amended, I have put the detail into that article, and there is actually an example there as to how you actually calculate it, because we know now that the 80%, you will also get back your employer's national insurance and basic pension contributions on top of the 80%. That came out in the detail last night, which we weren't sure about yesterday. So that's in the article on the website in the news section. And there is an example there of what you will actually get back based on what the salary is. It also tells you how to calculate the salary based on last year's, the relevant month last year, or an average of the year. So all of those to do with salaries, I'm going to skip through. Will there be any leeway for newly employed that have yet to submit a return? I think the answer is no. The Chancellor was adamant that if you can't submit a tax return for 18-19, then you do not get the self-employed grant. They have given 4 weeks as of today, so I think it's April the 23rd, to submit last year's self-assessment tax return if you're late or clients are late. So there's a 4-week window, and that's one of the reasons why they've had to delay this self-employment grant. If you listen to the Chancellor last night, he was explaining that.
Now, there was a piece of news on yesterday, I don't know if it was real news or not, but it did say that when this was first announced, there was a sudden influx of builders, decorators, plasterers who suddenly realised they were self-employed. So something like this has been introduced to stop anything like that happening. People who are perhaps not on the system suddenly getting on. Yeah, no, not just in builders or plasterers or anything else. There was a long list of people, but it was basically people who have been working off payroll or whatever you want to call it, but the grey economy. And I think the government are going to use this when we get out of this, not so much worry about it now, but they will be trying to do a lot with it. Again, it's another question for Bill Dodwell on Wednesday, perhaps.
I haven't seen anything on the chat lines yet, but one of the things, as Gary's already mentioned, that the Chancellor said last night is that he wants to bring parity for tax payments between self-employed and the employed. I'd say this is sort of off the record comment, but I was thinking over the last 4 years, I've been heavily involved in helping to work with the MTD for income tax. And one of the comments that came out in the very early days, although it's been put on hold for the moment, is that doing the quarterly returns, whether the tax would be payable quarterly, and the government have always stated that that was not the intention, and you would not have to pay quarterly tax for the lifetime of that parliament, which of course we're now 2 or 3 parliaments on from that. And I wait with interest to see when that comes out way down the line, whether it's actually going to have an effect on the way we pay our tax to self-employed people.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't even have raised that because I've worried you all like mad now, but
I think
just the way it's stuck in there.
I think you and I both remember that when this announcement first came out about the digital tax revolution, they did say that the tax would be paid as well, but they quickly took that back out of the white paper. A second version was then submitted without that in.
Yeah.
So I think they did get a backlash. However, I can see it coming, but we'll keep an eye on that.
It was just that slightly understated comment about parity between self-employed and employed. And I know they were looking at some figures in the early days of how much additional tax they would get up front if people had to submit their returns and pay their tax quarterly. And there were some figures around in the very early stages. So I think for that, we're going to watch this space on that one, because I have a funny feeling that one's going to go round and round the chat lines.
Join us at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. We'll put this to Bill. And as I say, he answers blunt questions, so get ready to put some blunt questions to him. I'm hoping he's going to be very frank with us.
Sorry, I'm just catching up. I'm quite a long way behind on the chat questions, so a lot of these I think we've already answered. If you weren't on the payroll by on the 28th of February in your new job, can you ask to be furloughed by your old employer? This one came up yesterday. Presumably, if you've left, then they've given you a P45 and they would have to re-employ you and backdate it. But they didn't lay you off, you resigned. So I'm not sure what's going to happen about that one.
Yeah, from reading the bits that we've got here, I think basically that's it. You can't go back on that, I don't know.
Claiming use of universal credit, I'm afraid I don't know very much about. There's some questions there about dates and universal credit. I can't answer that one because I actually don't know the answer to it, but I think you've got to have a look on the universal credit application and see what questions they ask you. I've had a conversation with a couple of our members about applying for universal credits, and I know there has been a huge backlog and a very long waiting list. So if you didn't get in on the very early days, you may have to wait a while. It's taking quite a long time to get through. One here from Nicola. The ICB tax advisor that I spoke to this morning said if the 80% wasn't agreed by the employee, they would still be entitled to be paid 100% under employment law. So the employer can't assume to only pay 80%. Now, I have read around this, and if your employee will not agree to be furloughed, then you can make them redundant because they are, you know, under the current circumstances, you might have to pay them 100% during their period of redundancy until you've agreed, but you could announce that they are redundant because you have no job for them at the moment. The retention scheme is to try to keep staff on, but if your staff don't agree to it, we're not saying you have to keep them on. The government is saying we're doing this so you can keep them on, but I think you could still lay them off.
Yes, and somebody did ask if I lay off my staff and I furlough my staff and I give them their 80%, whilst they're on furlough, are they able to go to interviews for another job? Yeah, mean as it sounds, they probably are. But of course, when... Yeah.
As if anyone's interviewing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have to tell you they're interviewing, and but they would have to resign in the normal manner, I suppose.
If an employee is on more than the 2,500 times 80%, does the employer have to pay them 80% of the salary, even though they can only claim up to the 2,500 back to the government? The employer can pay whatever it can negotiate with its employees. They can top it up to 100% if they want to, but they don't have to. And they're actually not working. If you furlough them, they're not working. So therefore, they have no traveling expenses or anything else. And basically, they're being paid 80% of up to 2,500 for sitting at home. Because if they're working at home, then you will pay them their normal rate for working if they're still working. And if they're furloughed, you have no work for them. Again, it's a contract of employment issue. Lots going on here, backwards and forwards about accrued in holiday entitlement.
Yeah. Karen says, do we know what needs to be included in the notification that needs to be sent to the employees who are to be furloughed? Now, I believe that this is up on our website, on the hub, and it's something from ICAS, the Conciliation and Advisory Service. I will check whilst we're on air just to make sure that is the case. If not, it's on its way up there. But
I think there is a link. There is a link up there in the hub. I looked at it this morning.
Great,
what the link to the hub gives you on the ACAS website is the suggested content. It doesn't actually give you a template. Now, we have seen various people yesterday were putting up links to various templates that are available. And can I just reiterate what Garry said yesterday? Even if these do come from a semi-official source, you do need to be careful if you use these.
Why? Sorry, I'm just listening to June sitting here reading through the new legislation, page upon page upon page of it. Companies need to have a UK bank account. The government will only refund to a UK bank account. That's interesting.
There's another one up here for the averaging for self-assessment. The average over the last 3 years of your taxable profits. If your taxable profits are over 50,000 over the last 3 years, you don't get a penny. There was an article, I think, in the Times this morning about a barrister who has been averaging at about 53,000 and is going to get absolutely nothing, and the courts will shut down and she's got no work. But no, that they are the people that are going to fall out of the system.
Yeah.
They've had
I'm not sure where the 50,000, why they chose 50,000, but apparently it's only a small percentage of the total number of self-employed. And as I said yesterday, the government were talking about in excess of 1 million people earning less than 10,000 per annum who were self-employed. So, yeah, it's. I think, excuse me, the government is obviously thinking that if you're earning more than £50,000 a year after all clears, you should be on PAYE, which is another idea.
Yeah. Now that's 50,000 comes out to be 4,166 per month, and they're paying up to 2,500. So.
Yeah.
You'll get up to 2,500.